Hello. Okay,
Hello.
there's Ralph's treadmill. One of these days, I think maybe he'll there's Ralph. He'll be walking on that treadmill and just sitting beside it.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there, Mary. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm keeping up. Keeping up. Keeping up.
Good.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining this virtual meeting of the Audit, Compliance, and Risk Committee of the Board of Trustees and the Research Foundation Board of Directors. As we proceed with our agenda, please remember to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. I will now call the roll of the committee. Jim Rogers here. John Chilton. John, are you on mute?
Okay, John waved at you. He's on mute. John, you may need to unmute yourself.
There you go. I got it. I'm here.
Thank you, John. Al Cornish is not present. Sandra Frazier.
Here.
Gary Stewart.
I'm here, Jim.
Thank you. Having determined a quorum is present, I would like to call this meeting to order. The first item of business is the approval of minutes from June 25th, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion from a committee member to approve the minutes?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor signify aye.
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 Opposition? Any abstention? The motion carries and the minutes stand approved. Our next item of business is the approval of the ULRF audited financial statements. Chris Suda is with us. Would you like to begin, Chris?
Yes, Jim, and good afternoon, everyone. Could I get a really quick sound check, Jim, just to make sure you can hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation for everyone to follow along, and Jake's going to be advancing the slides for me. So again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Suda, and I am a principal with CLA, and I'm responsible for the university's independent external audit. And with me today is Ethan Lay, my senior in charge. This was my day-to-day senior who, did the bulk of the heavy lifting here. So I want to thank you for inviting us today. We are here to present the results of the University of Louisville's and its blended component unit, the Research Foundation's independent external financial statement audit for the year ending June 30, 2020. If we could please move to slide 2, terms of the engagement. So just to cover the terms of the engagement really quick, CLA was engaged by the university's Board of Trustees to perform an independent external financial statement audit. And CLA's responsibility is to express an opinion on these financial statements based on that audit. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. So everything you see within the financial statements is management's with the exception of our audit reports. As part of this engagement, we do provide our report on internal controls and compliance under government auditing standards and express an opinion on compliance over major federal programs, which currently is delayed, and we will discuss that here in a minute. So if we could move to slide 3, please. So the audit scope and coverage. So just to give some background, the audit process did start, back in March of 2020. CLA's audit is performed using a risk-based approach, so the amount of time that we spend in each audit area is commensurate with the level of identified risk. And here on this slide, there are some examples of some of the more significant audit areas in which we focused a significant amount of our audit procedures and time. We can move to slide 4, please. So COVID-19. So COVID has clearly made a significant impact on higher education and the audit process. Most notably as it relates to the single audit and the CARES Act, specifically the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, which the university received a significant amount. The university's single audit is currently delayed, as I mentioned earlier, pending the release of the United States Office of Management and Budget's Compliance Supplement Addendum, which will provide the CARES compliance requirements. So the single audit can't move forward until the OMB releases this supplement with the requirements. So what we have done is, we've provided a split release of the financial statement audit, and we'll later finalize the single audit upon release of this addendum by the OMB. If we could please move to slide 5. So slide 5, audit results and highlights. CLA's audit reports are signed and they have been issued on October 20th. Now, these reports are specific to the financial statements for the university as well as the research foundation. On page 2 of our report is the opinion paragraph, and our audit opinion is unmodified, which is the cleanest opinion available under the auditing standards. And this is exactly what the board should expect to see. Any deviation should raise some concerns. As mentioned before, our audit opinion on the federal awards is delayed. One item, I do want to draw your attention to page 60 in the notes. We do have a special item for fiscal year 2020, which is the acquisition of the Kentucky One Hospital System, which resulted in a gain of approximately $132.4 million, which is separately presented as a special item in the financial statements. We could please move to slide 6. So our report on internal controls and compliance starts on page 93. This report is commonly referred to as our Yellow Book report. We have communicated that we did not identify any deficiencies determined to be material weaknesses, and under our standards, that's the only thing we're allowed to say if we didn't identify any. And this is, really good results. The university did implement proper corrective action plans to remove all prior year Yellow Book findings, which were communicated as significant deficiencies. So, that's really positive news for the university. So if we could please move to slide 7. So with the single audit, being delayed due to the compliance supplement addendum, I did want to at least communicate that, we do have 2 major federal programs which have been identified, the Student Financial Aid Cluster and the CARES Act Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, that are going to be under audit as part of the single audit. And that reporting, the results will be released at a later time. So please move to slide 8. Just some other communication items. We did communicate a couple opportunities for strengthening the university's internal controls. These don't elevate to something that we would include in our Yellow Book report. However, we do want to provide these just because they are opportunities for the university. And one of those is for identifying new or amended contracts during the procurement process, and the others around performing account reconciliations on the retirement plan liability. If we could please move to slide 9. Our governance communication letter, we did issue a 3-page letter addressed to the Board of Trustees. I would encourage everyone to read that letter in its entirety. It's a really good summary of the audit. And if something did go wrong during the course of the audit, it would be clearly communicated in this letter. However, I am here today to tell you that the audit went extremely well and we have no concerns, especially in light of COVID. I think this audit process moved extremely well. We can move to slide 10. So slide 10, our auditing standards require us to communicate, any corrected and uncorrected misstatements. And this schedule just simply presents that the university has one uncorrected misstatement for which management believes is immaterial to the university's financial statements, and we as the auditor agree. We could move to slide 11. So again, on this schedule, we present 2 research foundation uncorrected misstatements for which the management believes is immaterial to the university's financial statements, and we agree. So please move to slide 12. So I just want to throw out there that the Government Accounting Standards Board in May 2020 issued statement number 95, which postponed most government pronouncements by 1 year in light of COVID-19. So really good news, really appreciated, did the right thing in light of COVID. But here on slide 12, we just present a few of those more significant accounting pronouncements that may impact the university in future periods. And probably most notably is GASB 87, the leases, just, around moving in the direction of one single reporting model for leases. And it's probably going to require, some additional resources for the university. But, GASB did postpone the standard. So if we could please move to slide 13. So I really just want to thank the Board of Trustees for the opportunity to serve, and I would welcome any questions pertaining to the audit.
Are there any questions for Chris? Thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you.
May I have a motion to approve the Research Foundation's audit financial statements as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any opposition? Abstention? The motion carries. Next on our agenda today is the approval of the university's audited financial statements. Begin with Dan Durbin has an update. Dan, will you brief us, please?
Yes, sir. Jake, would you mind popping the slide deck up? Here we go. Okay. Would you mind? Thank you. So I wanted to take just a few moments. In a few moments, you'll hear about our external auditors report on the financial statement audit and the opinion and the audit report. However, I wanted to take just a few moments and convey some things from management's perspective. One way to consider it is I'd like to try to condense or summarize about 100 pages worth of audit report down to some few key points on some few slides. But before I do that, I want to just kind of convey from management standpoint the perspective that we are very proud of the audit results. We're proud of the fact that it earned the highest opinion possible in the profession. We're proud of the fact that we were able to work together, we being the entire campus, were able to work together and clear some of the deficiencies in internal controls that we had last year and in some cases a year before. And as a reminder, some of those included unapproved timesheets, employee timesheets, and exit interviews with financial aid recipients and things like that. So we were able to get both our financial house in order and also our internal control house in order this year. And as Chris mentioned, the fun with audit approval's not over yet. We'll be back in front of you here soon with the single audit for the Research Foundation. But the other piece I wanted to try to do was to highlight some of the financial aspects and the operational aspects that you'll see in the statements through those 100 pages. And just a couple reminders of some themes that you'll see that play themselves out over the statements. The first of which is all these statements are accrual basis, which means that they capture commitments. If I commit to make a payment, that's an expense. If someone commits to pay us, that's a revenue. The cash doesn't necessarily have to change hands. That's very important, you know, in thinking through these statements. The second piece is the statements measure economic value of everything, not only the cash that changes hands or those commitments to one another, you know, us versus them, but also the value of buildings, for example. Capital assets have a value to them, and you'll see that play into the numbers as well. The other thing that influenced our statements pretty significantly in our activity were three things. Number one, the healthcare facility acquisition. Although the university did not pay a dime for any of those healthcare assets, we did benefit in terms of net position because some of those assets were given to the university to help with federal reimbursements. The second piece is that the hospital and the system did a little bit better than expected. So the health system did some enhanced mission support, performed an enhanced mission support payment toward the commitment rather toward the end of July. It declared that. And last but finally not least, COVID-19 had a significant impact on our financial statements as well, on our financial activity and operations. But with all of this combined, we still met our balanced budget objective. Actually, we ended up a little on the positive side of zero, which we'll look at the next slide if you would turn the page, Jake. All right, so I would invite you to focus on the first column. Midway down the page, total revenues of $1.2 billion were recognized last fiscal year. And that $1.2 billion included a couple of very significant things. The first of which, it included $141.5 million worth of capital revenues. And most of that capital revenue was the value of those healthcare assets that were given to the university. Okay, so we put about $132 million worth of healthcare assets, bricks and mortar, on our books. The rest of that is basically the capital revenues that we recognized for the completion of the academic classroom building on Belknap. A few rows up on clinical services and practice plans, that number is a little higher than last year. And one of the key drivers of that increase is that $37 million pledge from the health system for enhanced mission support. And I use the word pledge very very kind of precisely. And what I mean by that is it was a pledge that's funded over 3 years. So no cash was received on that pledge through June 30th. But we will receive funding, the cash to fund that pledge over a 3-year period. So again, we ended the year with about $1.2 billion worth of revenues. And if you follow the expenses down, we spent about just a little under $1.040 billion, $1.039 billion. So we had a total increase in our net position or our net value of $184 million last year. But again, these statements measure the total economic value. So if we pull the value of the capital out of that, which is 141 million, that's not cash, it's bricks and mortar. And we also pull that pledge of 37 million out because again, it's a pledge, not cash that came in. If you normalize how we did last year, we ended up with about a $5.9 million surplus or change in net position. That number, if you had wind a hand of time back to back May of last year, we budgeted 0. So we came in about $5.9 million better than expected, which is about half of 1%. So it's not much, but frankly, it's a lot better than a lot of our peers had experienced. Okay. When we turn to the balance sheet, I think the best way for me to explain and describe the balance sheet is the fact that we have it's stable, but we have deliberate and slow improvement. And there's some areas that we've highlighted that we'd call your attention to. Number one is the liquidity aspect of our balance sheet. You'll see that cash has increased over the prior year. Both the unrestricted cash has increased, and also the restricted cash. The restricted cash is basically the proceeds of the bonds that we issued toward the end of June for the residence hall. So those will turn to bricks and mortar over the course of this year and result in a new residence hall. We also have the capital assets a little further down, the $1,076,000. That increase is attributable again to the donation of the healthcare assets. Finally, we have the bonds. You'll see that bonds have increased from the prior year from about 235 million up to about 264. The interesting thing is that we issued about $45 million worth of debt that added to that, but we also paid over $20 million worth of the old debt off. So even though the total bond number, the bond obligation is higher, we are paying the old issuances off, and we also, in addition to kind of layering the new bond obligations on for the new residence hall. So when all is said and done, assets, liabilities, we actually ended the year with an increase in both our capital assets and our unrestricted net assets. And again, liquidity improved, total assets increased, with the exception of the residence hall additional debt that we incurred, that we issued, our liabilities decreased. So everything's on the balance sheet, everything's moving the right way. Okay, would you mind? Okay. Now, speaking of liquidity, we wanted to revisit that. We try to share this with the board each and every year at a minimum. And I think one thing that is really striking is a couple of years ago, the board ratified a liquidity policy where we were to focus on building liquidity over the next few years. And I think it's really important for us to look back over the last few years, how we've done. Back in 2017, you'll see that the liquid cash, which is the cash in the university's checkbook, was about $78 million. That's low, considering one payroll is around $60 million. There's not much headroom to operate. Over the years, we've been able to increase that, and at the end of 2020, we ended with just a little shy of $160 million of cash in the bank. And when we start to layer some of the other layers of cash or liquidity availability on, you'll see that our total cumulative days of cash on hand have increased pretty significantly from back in 2017 of about 79 days to about 111 days this year. Now, we see increases in the university side on cash, but we also are starting to draw down some of those funds held in the foundation. For example, if you look in 2017, the balances of available cash that we had in the foundation were about $111 million compared to about $86 million at the end of 2020. So we're starting to draw those down, but they're being drawn down again, very deliberately, very strategically, very different than in the past. And also just wanted to share the month-to-month variances in liquidity to show that especially from the beginning of March through the end of June, when we implemented the $39 million corrective plan to mitigate the COVID-19 risks, the plan worked. And it allowed us to end the year in a better cash position. And frankly, cash is the lifeline during a kind of the time period that we're experiencing with COVID-19. So it worked. It worked very nicely. Jake, would you mind? Okay. So I would invite you, as CLA talks about the financial report and the audit, I'd like to close with a couple things. Number one is we feel that we did the right thing in terms of we held to the budget. We all had to make some very difficult decisions, but we did the right thing by making sure that we kept good, stable financial performance and position. We're very proud of the fact that there's an external attestation to the fact that we've done that in terms of the auditor's opinion on the financial statement. And we also implemented some very strenuous and disciplined financial planning and financial processes behind that, again, to eliminate those deficiencies in internal control and also to make sure that we maintain enough dollars to be able to function into the future and avoid some of the things that, frankly, a lot of our peers are experiencing right now. And last but certainly not least, Jake, would you mind to, thank you. Last but certainly not least, I mean, the last few months have been very difficult, to say the least. The world turned upside down on everyone at the end of March, at the beginning of March, rather. We've all had to make sacrifices. We've all had to do different things in different ways from different locations. But one of the things that has not really changed has been the commitment to excellence from not only the people who helped develop the financial statements that you saw, that you have in your board packet that the auditors have opined on, but also the people who helped drive those financial results that are contained in those statements. The campus came together as one, and we were able to get through the year on target, and that is to me, that is speaks volumes to the institution and the people who contributed to that. And with that, I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have now, or if you'd like me to answer them later, we can do it offline.
Any questions for Dan? Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Chris, do you have any comments to add?
Yeah, Jim. No, I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Chris? Not hearing any. May I have a motion to approve the university's audit financial statements as presented?
So
Jim,
moved.
Before you do, I got a question.
Yes, Raymond.
Yeah, Dan, on page 108 in the audit, there's a $1 million note payable from the University of the Foundation. What's that for?
Oh, let's see. On page 108, you say?
Yep.
Let me look. Oh. Can I look that up and get back with you, Raymond? I'll have to.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Dan, would you like me to tell him?
Yeah, if you.
I don't want to interfere.
That's all right. I'm looking for the page, but yeah.
Raymond, back in about 2013, the university lent the foundation money for a variety of reasons. Beginning in 2017, it turns out that there was never any payment schedule for that. So when Leslie was here, we negotiated a repayment schedule, which will have that debt extinguished in early 21. And it's based upon a specific payment schedule for that loan back with interest to the university.
But I think on page 108, it says a note payable from the university to the foundation. It should be just reversed in what you described.
Yeah, that's what I was.
You can get that later. I just like want to know.
Okay.
Thank you, Raymond.
Chance, we have a conversation offline about the amount of money going into instruction, support for instruction.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? Opposition? Abstention? The motion carries. Our last item of business are informational updates from our Vice President for Risk Management, Audit, and Compliance. Sandy, would you like to begin?
Sure, thank you. You had two documents in your packet. One was the Audit Service Annual Report and our mission statement and charter. The reason for the mission statement and charter is that we went through and made corrections to the name of the committee, which was addressed as just Audit Committee, and we changed that with the bylaws for the committee changed to Audit, Compliance, and Risk Committee. So we made those same changes in the mission statement and charter, so to be consistent. The other item that you had was the annual audit report, and I'll just highlight a few things there. First, I'd just like to say thank you to the administration, faculty, and staff. Once again, we received excellent cooperation in our audits, in our investigations, in our projects, so I'd like to say thank you. Another item you may recall is that our IT auditor retired in January 2020. We have been looking for a qualified candidate. We've had some difficulty there because this is a specialized area. So we have issued an RFP for these services, and we hope to have a partner on board by January of 2020 to help us in this area. Also, if you look at the audit plan that's provided, I believe it's on page 9, you'll notice that the succession plan has been searched. So that's going to take that place. We'd love to come back and do succession planning if we have the resources and time. And that's really all that I wanted to bring to your attention off the report. If you have any questions, just let me know. Anyone with any questions?
Any questions of Sandy?
Yeah, this is Mary. I'm just curious, Sandy, you said you've got an RFP out for co-sourcing the IT audit aspect?
Yes.
Are you fully staffed for all your non-IT audit responsibilities?
Right now we are, yes. Mm-hmm. But this is just one key area that we've just had difficulty finding a qualified candidate.
They're not easy to find.
No, they are not.
Any other questions for Sandy? Thank you, Sandy. These items require no action at this time. So having no other business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes. So move.
And a second.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Jim. We may begin the Research Foundation meeting.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining the virtual meeting of the U of L Research Foundation Board of Directors. I will now call the roll. Jim Rogers, here. Scott Brinkman.
Here.
Randy Bufford.
Here.
Raymond Burse.
Here.
John Chilton.
Here.
Sabrina Collins.
Here.
Al Cornish is not here. Sandra Frazier.
Here.
Thank you. Diane Medley.
Here.
Mary Nixon.
Here.
Diane Porter.
Here.
Thank you. David Schultz.
Here.
John Smith.
Here.
Having determined a quorum is present, I'd like to call this meeting to order. First, I'd like to welcome David Schultz to his first Research Foundation board meeting. David is the current Faculty Senate Chair and will be joining us in the Board of Trustees this year. David, is there anything you'd like to say today?
No, just hello, and I'm excited to be here and to start to learn what's happening in the Board of Trustees.
Well, thank you, David. We're all very excited to work with you. As chair, it's my responsibility to remind all members of the board of the responsibility to avoid conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict of interest. Each member has received the agenda and related information for this Board of Directors meeting. If any board member knows of any conflict of interest or appearance of conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the Board of Directors at this meeting, please identify the conflict or appearance of the conflict at this time. Hearing none, our next item of business today is the approval of the consent agenda. Please call out if you would like to further discuss any item. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify aye.
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 Opposition? Abstention? The motion carries. Next is the report of the chair, in which I'd like to take this opportunity to remind, remind the Board of Directors that Jake Beamer will send you a conflict of interest and disclosure form, and he kindly asks that you complete it, sign it, and return to him via email at your earliest convenience. That concludes my report. Having no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor signify aye.
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 The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Jim. Mary, you may begin.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank everybody for joining this regular meeting of the University of Louisville Board of Trustees. Having already determined a quorum present, I would like to call this meeting to order. I'd also like to welcome Diane Porter and David Schultz. And while they were just in the previous board meeting for the Research Foundation and they were at our committee meetings, this is their first regular board meeting. So welcome, Diane and David. Next, I feel like I'm repeating Jim Rogers. As board chair, it's my responsibility to remind all members of the board of their responsibility to avoid conflicts of interest and or the appearances of conflict of interest. Each member has received an agenda and the related information for this meeting. If any board member knows of any conflict or appearance of conflict with respect to any matter coming before the Board of Trustees today, please identify the conflict or appearance at this time.
Mary, this is not a conflict, but I failed to recognize Diane as a new board member and ask her if she wanted to say anything.
I'm fine, thank you.
All right. So Diane and David, you should feel very welcome. Okay, so hearing no conflicts or appearance of conflicts, the first item of business is the approval of the consent agenda as listed. Please call out if there's any item you'd like to discuss. Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries. Our next item is the approval of a master lease agreement for the construction of a new residence hall. I think we've got Dan, Michael, and Vince all prepared to brief us, but I'm not sure who wants to go first.
Jake, you want to pull up that presentation, and I can just start real quick and inform the board. Thank you, Chair Nixon. This is not substantially different in terms of the project scope. Jake, you can go ahead and advance the slide from what we presented at the Board of Trustees Finance Committee. So the scope of the project remains the same. There was some refinement of the financials that Dan is going to go over, but the structure of the building, the programmatic components are the same. So Jake, if you advance to the next slide. Dan, you want to start to go over the financial pieces?
Again, kind of from the waterfall perspective of how the transaction works, we're looking at collecting about $1.7 million of student rental revenues for the facility. There's some costs related to the facility, about $482,000 worth of costs that will be paid directly from the facility's operations, with a balance of about 1.2 being paid to the joint venture or the partner. So the cash out of pocket is going to be about the initial cash out of pocket is going to be about 1.2 million. Jake, would you mind turning? So there's a little nuance with the 1.2 million, and that is some of that, in total about $80,000 will come back to both the university and the foundation to reimburse us for the ground lease, with about $21,000 to be exact coming back to the university and about $60,000 going to the foundation. So our net out-of-pocket cost, if you will, investment in the facility is about $1.202 million per year. And that also includes a reserve. They're to fund a reserve of about $45,000 a year for future equipment and equipment repair and deferred maintenance. So again, the cash out the door is about $1.2 million for this. Now, the overriding concept that we tried to maintain on this was to not influence or negatively impact the university's operating margin. And this is being funded from partially moving some things around. In other words, right now, athletics pays for off-campus housing, and they also pay for beds in Minority Hall. Those will be Minority Hall beds for athletic student athletes will be shifted to the new facility. And those beds that are vacated in Minority will be backfilled with new students. It will change from an athletic type or shared venue to more of a live learning community. The second thing is athletics is paying for off-campus facilities as part of their scholarshiping programs to student athletes. So that's a matter of speaking, that's insourcing that. It's instead of writing checks and paying the 9, for example, it brings it back in-house into the facility. We also have other student athletes who are paying from their private funds, from their self-pays, if you will, outside of university housing venues. Those will be coming back in. And last but not least, about 50 beds in the new facility will be for general student non-athlete use. So those students that'll be incremental revenue to the university because it's new beds for about 47 students. That includes about a 5% vacancy allowance. There's 50 beds, but we're going to assume a 5% vacancy allowance gets it down to about 47. If we fill all 50, then that marginal impact of the university of 89 increases. But again, we tried to structure this in a way that yes, we are incurring additional costs, but how can we generate additional revenue to help offset those costs to make this margin neutral? And we've ran this out over the 40-year life. Years 1 through 5 standalone, and then in 10-year intervals to show that how the progression of this works. Again, over the first 5 years, and then in 10-year intervals, you'll see that margin of $89,000 first year, and then because of the 2% inflation on the rents and 2% inflations on the costs, the escalators, that also goes up as well. So this thing, it does through the duration, it does cash flow. And it cash flows positively. Last thing we wanted to do was describe kind of why a master lease, why a P3. The first of there was a lot of strategy behind it. First of which is it pushes risk to the developer. You sign on a dotted line. This is what you have to deliver it at. It doesn't matter if it costs more. This is what you're obligated to. Second thing is we wanted to preserve our bond capacity for future academic and research projects, kind of looking ahead. The other piece is that we're doing a 40-year term on this project. The state, if we were to bond this, the state would go 20, maybe 30 years, but to keep the price points as reasonable and as low as possible, we wanted to go out 40 years, which is a little outside of the realm of what the state's comfortable in dealing with. The other piece is we already have state approval for this. Years ago, we obtained approval for construction of 2 residence halls and bonding for those residence halls, which we've executed with the replacements for Miller and Threckle. And we also have approval for a P3 lease, which this falls in that category. So this kind of feeds into the timeliness as we have the approval and we are able to implement this in a much more timely manner and get it built and operational a bit faster than if we would have to go through a different route.
Okay, Jake, next slide. We talked through it last meeting and we had Dr. Meg Hancock from the College of Education talked about the benefit of this project to sports administration. So I won't spend a lot of additional time on this, but this will be a living learning community for our sophomore and above sport administration students. Next slide. A little rustling about. Jake, can you advance to the next slide, please? And then you see where the location is. Obviously, this helps to clean up another piece of property along Floyd Street, and its location across from the Cooper Center will assist in recruiting students that are going to be student athletes for lacrosse, women's basketball, and men's basketball. So next slide, Jake. Here, obviously, that's a drastic improvement over the lot and what currently resides there. So it will help in terms of the beautification of campus. And then you can continue on. This is going to be a premier facility, so it'll be very attractive for students to want to live in this space. And for our student athletes and our students that are involved in the sport administration program, they're going to be able to have their own room, but be able to benefit from the living learning community environment as well. So today we're actually, last meeting it was just an informational update at the Finance Committee, but you do have action items on the master lease. So we are asking for approval of the information that was sent in advance and asking for approval of the master lease. And then the next steps after that, if we're granted approval, we would move forward with detailed construction drawings. And Vince is continuing on. He's already been very successful with fundraising initiatives for this project, and we would move forward with detailed construction drawings with the plan to open the new residence hall in the fall of 2022. So we could take any questions that anyone has. Vince, Dan, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, you all got a summary of the lease agreement and then the actual master lease agreement in your pre-reads for the board meeting. So does anybody have any questions for Dan, Dr. Martis, or Vince?
Randy does. Randy Buffer does, and John
absolutely. It looks like a great project, very supportive. Just over my short tenure, we've now launched the construction of 3 new housing projects, which, by the way, I stayed in Miller Hall in 1979, so I understand the replacement as well, if not better than anybody else here. And I was happy when they let me went off campus for my senior year. So again, at some point in time, market capacity between on campus and off campus certainly should impact feasibility projections, yet everyone I've seen so far assumes very robust occupancy. And so I'm sure that's been addressed. If you want to send me some research or something offline by the time they get to this level. But I just noticed that, we do have private developers around the university building. We have our own on-campus stuff, and the cost savings from this assumes we're backfilling all of these other units that we're transferring. And so I'm sure it's been looked at, but if maybe you could give me some voiceover around that and see who's really taking the risk here of that not, if those units don't get backfilled, then the feasibility is not as you say it is. Thank you.
So, and Randy, I'll take a little bit of a response in terms of that, and happy to send you more information. We completed a study of our housing and what additional beds we needed about 4 years ago. And at that time, it indicated about 800 new beds. And between the 2 new residence halls and this new P3 project, it's an additional 735 beds. So it falls in line with what those recommendations were from that company that we had to complete the housing study. Additionally, we have our housing operation, we have affiliate properties that are on 1-year leases. So a lot of that inventory, we're able to control and mitigate that risk. That isn't risk that the university assumes directly. So we enter into those agreements year by year. And if, we saw a time period where we had fewer students that were choosing to reside on campus, we could decide to not execute those options in subsequent years. So that gives us a lot of flexibility that we could reduce the volume and not impact our occupancy. And then the other thing I would mention is for this incoming cohort, we are moving towards sophomore live-on. So in the past, we've had a freshman live-on. And now with all the affiliate properties and what's being built up in the living learning communities that we're expanding for our sophomore students, we do have a sophomore live-on component, but we have a very flexible waiver options if students want to live on home or if they have some other financial concerns. But we do know and see the benefits of student success for our students in terms of their retention, their graduation rates by living on campus and living in these living learning communities.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I think both of those points, including the ability to cancel those affiliation agreements with 1-year notice, very helpful for us being in the best position. So that's outstanding answer.
Yes, that's a great question, Randy. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Mary, I've got a comment, not so much a question. I just want to make sure everybody understands that adding a residential piece to that part of campus combined with the improvements that athletics has already made along the Floyd Street corridor and combined also with the high level of pedestrian traffic from a lot of students that park at the football stadium and then use Floyd Street as their walkway to campus really presents an amazing amount of potential for other things to happen along that corridor and continue to, Dr. Martis referenced cleaning up another piece of the Floyd Street area in his comments earlier. The potential for this to have further implications down the road in a positive manner for the university are just incredible.
Thank you, John. Does anybody else have any questions or comments they want to make?
Sabrina Collins does.
Yes, so I had a question about the rates for non-athletics affiliated students, so specifically the sports administration, living learning community. How will the affordability of those spaces compare to what's already present on campus for those students?
So what we worked out, and Vince and I have had a lot of conversations back and forth, and because this is a smaller building project, a lot of our buildings you'll see with the new residence halls, they're in the 400, 450 range. That's pretty common, but this is a smaller facility, and athletics is assisting in a couple of ways. They are assisting by fundraising for this project and being able to bring capital into the project with the fundraising that they're completing. They are also helping to subsidize the difference in the cost. So students that are in the sport administration program won't have to pay as much of the rent because athletics is helping with a subsidy for that. And then they also will help with their naming rights. And Vince, you could talk a little bit about the fundraising components. But the way they're structuring the naming rights is just over a shorter duration of time. So in future years, 10 years out, 15 years out, they're going to have an ability to go out and do more fundraising for this facility. So those are a few of the ways that we're helping to mitigate the cost to students.
Yes, Sabrina, I think to Dean Martis's point, one of the things we were cognizant of as this opportunity came about is as we entertained it from athletics and what our commitment might be to it, we also were thoughtful not only about our own individual bed rate, which we were obviously paying at minority and over Betty Johnson in the 9. We were hoping that effectively come out net sum zero. That was our goal. And I think with the, which we've been able to accomplish was what we have here. And then by doing fundraising, it was able to effectively buy down the bed rate. So athletics will have a separate $3.5 million investment with IPA, the developer, where we'll pay that $1.5 million in March of 21, and then $500,000 every July 1st for the following 4 years. Those subsidies that we looked at, we're trying to make sure we were cognizant of the student population, not just the student athlete population, or where we wanted that rate to come out to be competitive. And then, certainly for us below minority, we pay $1,350 a month. This will be a little over $1,000 a month for athletics.
Sabrina, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? All right. Well, if not, may I have a motion to approve the master lease agreement to construct a new residence hall as you've just heard described?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded.
All those in favor signify aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries. All right, Neely, next item is the report of the president. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In preparing for this meeting today, I thought about what an honor it has been to be president here. Today marks 897 days that I've had the pleasure of leading this university. And the interesting thing of that is that 235 of those, or about 26% of my time here, has been COVID related. And that just goes to show how long this impact has been and what has been going on. And in this time period, as you all know very well, we've had significant challenges, but I could not be more proud of this team and what we have accomplished. You will hear in, not in lieu of, but as most of my presentation, a series of reports from my team. Just to quickly recap, in the little, not quite 2.5 years, we've really stabilized the financial situation of the university. And Chair Nixon, with your guidance and support, we also were able to do what is essentially a once-in-a-lifetime acquisition of the healthcare system in town to provide stability to the university, financially, morally, and the same goes for the community, and especially for patient care. We've also set a strategic plan in motion and identified the grand challenges for research. And of course, we have had great success in instilling values and ethics into our athletics department and throughout the institution. And finally, my most recent focus has been on creating an anti-racism agenda. We'll go through all of these, but I just wanted to prep you for the broad themes. So what I would like to do is to have Tom Miller, not yet Tom, I'm just telling them what's coming. Tom Miller to do a UFL health presentation. Dan Durbin will talk about our financial budget and how we are doing. And last meeting, I told you that in October, I'd have updates for our strategic planning. So I have asked Beth Bain and Kevin Gardner as Provost and Executive Vice President for Research, respectively, to provide very quick updates on enrollment management numbers, as well as our research numbers. But before we do any of that, Madam Chair, to begin, our focus as the leadership team has been absolutely on how do we make this a great place to learn, a great place to work, and a great place in which to invest. And of course, we'll talk about our diversity, equity, and inclusion measures in a few minutes. I thought it would be fitting for you all to hear our quality enhancement plan. This sits within the academic portfolio of Beth Bain and the Provost's office. But today I have asked Patty Payette, Gail Rhodes, and Beth Willey to give you a quick overview of what is called our QEP, or the Quality Enhancement Plan. Every time, Madam Chair, I'd like to present a little bit of what we are doing to constantly improve the quality of what we provide to our students, faculty, and staff. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, and I've told everybody to be brief.
Great. Thank you, Neely. Thank you for the board for this opportunity to give an update on Find Your Fit. I'm Patty Payette, the director of our QEP, and Jake's got a PowerPoint, short PowerPoint that I will lead you through to talk a little bit about this project. So my presentation today is to give you a brief update about this project, to let you know some of the findings and let you know what's next. Next slide, please. As part of the reaffirmation process, SACS COC asks each institution to develop a quality enhancement plan, or QEP. The QEP is a carefully designed and focused plan of action that enhances student learning or the environment to support student learning. The QEP, when we put it together as an institution, must be informed by institutional data, strategic priorities, and include a robust assessment plan for evaluating its effectiveness after 5 years. Next slide. As this graphic shows, we are at the beginning of the 4th year of the 5-year arc of the QEP. SACS expects that if we are successful with the QEP, it'll be woven into our institutional culture or curriculum. Our impact report to SACS is due in March of 2023. Next slide. So let me tell you a little bit about this project before I talk to you about the findings. The 4 outcomes of Find Your Fit represent the kinds of behaviors that are part of what student success looks like at U of L. Our QEP, it's an intervention for a particular subset of our undergraduate students. We have found that this group of students needs support to be successful. The students we target for the intervention are exploratory students. So that means students who are undecided in major, or they're pre-unit students. They're not academically eligible for the major of their choice. Additionally, what we found in the project is that there are students struggling with transition from one major to another, or to find a good fit, a major that fits them, and they have been participating as well. So basically what these outcomes focus on is ensuring that students have the inquiry and independent thinking skills they need. It's designed to enhance their belongingness in college and on campus, and it supports informed decision-making abilities and boosts their self-regulation skills to help them get back on track. This project allows us to support students academically and personally. Next slide. So now I'm just going to describe a little bit about what the intervention looks like. The intervention, at the heart of the intervention, is a 3-credit course called Personal and Academic Inquiry. We've devised this as a small seminar experience, and it's capped at 20 students per section. Each section is taught by an instructional team. It's made up of a lead faculty member, a designated academic advisor, and a librarian. And this illustrates the kind of shared ownership for student success that's a key part of our U of L strategic plan. Each seminar has an umbrella academic theme chosen by the lead faculty member, who introduces and engages students in the core concepts and the questions at the heart of the theme. This theme then provides the basis for students' semester-long inquiry projects. The designated librarian for each section provides strategic training and support for students in the research and the scholarly exploration. Just as the students are engaging in these academic projects, there is a number of personal exploration activities led by the advisor, which facilitates the students' discernment of their strengths, their goals, their values. So what happens is these 2 parallel inquiry tracks inform the students' creation of an academic and personal plan. It articulates their new insights that they've gained and their major and career goals as they're emerging. We've offered 16 sections of ECPY 302, the name of the course, since spring of 2018, and we've served 264 undergraduate students. So I'm going to now talk about some of the findings. Next slide, please. Our 3-tiered assessment plan helps us find out how this intervention is working. We're assessing students with learning within the course. We're assessing the impact of this unique learning environment and its approach. And we're evaluating the impact of Find Your Fit on student success at the institutional level. We're constantly evaluating and modifying the project as we go. So now to the findings. Next slide. This bar chart shows some preliminary analysis of the longitudinal impact of Find Your Fit. Looking at our first spring 2018 cohort of students represented in green here, we see that 2 years after taking the seminar, 75% of these students are persisting at U of L, versus our comparison group of students represented in blue who did not take the seminar, 55% who are persisting 2 years out. Preliminary analysis of our fall 2018 cohort shows a similar trend. Additionally, we're actively tracking each Find Your Fit cohort, integrating institutional data, such as their academic progression, noting any changes of major, persistence, and their completion of degree. Next slide. Some of the other additional findings show us that students who have taken this course since spring have left the seminar reporting the following gains: statistically significant increase in their sense of decidedness toward their decisions around major and career, statistically significant increase in self-efficacy related to information literacy, increased awareness of learning habits associated with student success, and a heightened sense of being part of a community and belonging at U of L. These first two outcomes showed very large effect size in comparison to a group of students we surveyed in fall 2000 academic semester who did not take the seminar. Next slide. So when COVID happened, we made sure that back in spring of 2020 that we kept students engaged with the course after spring break, even when it moved online. We supported faculty with teaching through this transition, modified the delivery of the course. Based on the data from spring, we saw growth in most all but one of the outcomes, including statistically significant increase in their sense of decidedness and self-efficacy of information literacy. We saw statistically significant increase in student sense of belonging. Over the summer and into this fall, we've worked closely with the instructional teams to create a hybrid course format that adjusts to the unique features of the curriculum. Next slide. So I'd like to wrap up with a couple more points and then open it for questions. We could not do this project without the commitment and passion of our campus partners, and we're really thankful. As we move forward, we continue to engage with our partners and use this expertise to make the project the best it can be. Next slide. Moving ahead, we're preparing additional longitudinal analysis, and we will begin to run regression analysis using the assessment data we've collected for each cohort since 2018. Amy Hershey, a faculty member from ECPY, will be co-chairing the QEP impact report with me as we engage a committee of stakeholders in devising a report to SACS about this project. We'll continue to share the emerging successful practices from Find Your Fit with our colleagues, including insights we're learning with our faculty about what does it mean to put student success at the heart of our teaching. Next slide. Thank you for your time, and I'll take questions.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. This is something I really didn't know anything about. I have two questions. One, what does ECPY stand for?
Yes.
And secondly, what does SACS do with this when the reports get turned in?
Great Great question. ECPY is an acronym for department in the College of Education that's our academic host for the course Department of Counseling and Human Development. And ECPY is grandfathered in as an acronym when the department had a different name. So it's a little confusing.
Well, I don't feel so bad then.
So the question after, I think your second question was what happens after we turn in the report to SACS?
Mm-hmm.
So SACS has a committee of reviewers that read our report, and they give the university a response when we get an official, official communication from SACS about whether our report has been accepted. And if there are any concerns about the report, they could ask us to do follow-up, and they could ask us questions and ask for a follow-up report. But the expectation in terms of for U of L is that we are able to mention in the report how we plan to continue with the success from the project and what we've learned as an institution as a result of the project.
And is there some sharing of other institutions that have been similarly involved?
You mean similar with QEPs on this topic, or just general QEPs?
Really, I guess either.
Okay, great question. So really what happens to the reports is SACS receives them, but after that, the university has no obligation to share their report. Some universities and colleges I found put their reports online and make them public so that others can learn from them or connect if it's a similar topic. Many colleges and universities don't. They just consider that a SACS audience and they don't make it public. Some will provide upon request. So that's, I hope that answers your question.
Mary, the QEP is peculiar to every institution in terms of what it does. So it's supposedly tailored to what an institution decides how it's going to enhance its quality. And so it's tailor-made. Now, there is some sharing among institutions, but not that much. I guess Neely and Jake, I would like for you to put on the Academic Affairs Committee this item for a little more in-depth. And in that in-depth, we were given the original plan and with some things in terms of what was to be achieved. And I guess I'd like to see that plan that was presented with the results that we got so we can have a further and more in-depth discussion in academic affairs.
That's a wonderful idea. We'll definitely do that. I, especially with new board members, Raymond and Mary, I thought it would be interesting for everybody to see what SACS does, what our accreditors expect of us. And as you recall, last time Raymond Burrs had to go with us and help us, showing that financially we were in good shape. And hopefully we never go back to that, but this will be part of our accreditation process as well.
And can I just interrupt for a second to ask Patty to speak to how SACS kind of used our QEP, this one, as a model when they were illustrating to other universities what a good QEP project was. So I think that we have gotten feedback and we have had our proposal shared.
Yes, thank you. I'd be happy to. So we submitted our 68-page proposal for this project when SACS was on campus in 2018 for our reaffirmation. And we got a lot of great feedback from the reviewers, and they were so impressed with our proposal, including our robust assessment plan, that for the past 2 years, they've made it one of the select few exemplary proposals available to any university who is wanting to look at what an exemplary proposal looks like at their annual meeting. So that's been a piece of that. And it's on our website, and we're happy to share that as well.
Mary, if there are no other questions, may I first of all, thank you, Payette, Patty. I'm just reading it out the way it shows up here, and Beth Willie and Gail Rhodes for this. As Beth Bain said, we thought this would be interesting because Patty and the group were invited to present and share with others as a best practice of how to do this. And thank you very much. And then I'd love to have a quick update from Tom Miller, followed by Dan Durbin. Tom?
Thanks, Neely. Let me introduce myself. I'm Tom Miller. I'm the CEO for U of L Health. I've been here 667 days, 1,000 of which I've had COVID with them. It's been an interesting time. Jake, if you'll help put the slides on, I would appreciate it. We'll go to the next one, Jake. Just for our new board members, just to give you an organizational overview, U of L Health is made up of 6 hospitals with 1,169 licensed beds. You should know the names: University Medical Center, Mary Elizabeth Hospital, Peace, Jewish Hospital, Shelbyville, and Fraser Rehab. We are a Kentucky nonprofit corporation. There is 11-member board, 5 who are appointed by the university, and those are the president of the university, who I report to, Dr. Bendaputi, Dean of the School of Medicine, Dr. Tony Gansel, a physician member of the faculty, which is Dr. Kelly McMaster, a member of the University Board at Large, which is our Finance Committee chair, and a member at large of the University Board, which is Dr. Williams. We are an academic health system, and we have 428 residents that are associated with the School of Medicine that work at our hospitals. We have 1,100 physicians and allied health professionals, and about 12,000 associates, both full-time and part-time, who work within the organization. Our revenues are approximately 1.8 billion. We are just a little larger than UK on the healthcare system side, and we're a quaternary health system. And what I mean by that is we're the community's level 1 trauma center. We're the transplant center for this part of the state. We're part of the R1 Research Center at University of Louisville, and we're a safety net hospital for our community. That's kind of a broad overview associated with U of L Health. Go ahead, Jake. You know, our current status, and what we're talking about the current status is because almost a year ago, the organization doubled in its size with the acquisition of Kentucky One Health. And over the last year, we've been working on the integration associated with that. And so that integration that's still outstanding generally relates to an IT build. We did not have the systems in place to be able to operate a new system that brought in 5 more hospitals. And so we entered into a $22 million agreement with Kentucky One Health to use their IT systems. It was our anticipation that we would use those for a little over 2 years. We are anticipating to be off of them in total on January 1st of this coming year. We also completed on 7/1, July 1st, the integration of our business office. Kentucky One Health had used an outside group called Conifer, and we brought that back in-house locally on July 1st. We also are anticipating bringing the medical group business office on site on December 3rd of this year. Our supply chain, we converted on June 1st of this year. We invested about $60 million in capital in 2020 fiscal year, which is July 1 through June 30th. And again, we expect it to take us about 2.5 years to get all the synergies associated with the acquisition of Kentucky One. We will complete them all by in 14 months on the first of the year. And so the acquisition has gone as well as any I have been a part of. We've been well received by all. We're seeing the community come back even under a COVID environment. We're running some of the highest censuses at Jewish Hospital that we've been running years that are at that facility. And so we're glad the community is responding back to us. Secondly, I wanted to take a second and give you an update on the KEDFA loan commitments. As part of the acquisition of the Kentucky One hospitals, the state, in partnership with 2 local foundations, the state agreed to loan us $35 million on certain conditions. First, that we would maintain at least 5,880 jobs that are full-time Kentucky jobs. We're currently at 6,100 jobs and trying to add another 400. Most of those are nursing. That we maintain an average hourly rate of $35. We're currently at $41. That we continue to serve those that are in need in the community. And 38% of our patients are Medicaid within the community. We truly are the safety net hospital. That we continue to develop primary care locations in underserved areas and rural areas, which we are doing. And so I gave a report this past week to the state's appropriation committee in regard to our update on the KEDFL loan. They were appreciative that we're not coming for more money. It went very, very well, and they were very thankful, and we thank them for their support. So we're in good shape right now with KEDFA. From a financial situation, Dan talked about the audit for the university. We just completed our audit. In this case, because of the acquisition of Kentucky One, it was an 8-month audit period. And during that 8-month audit period, we had many of the same things that the university saw as a result of the acquisition of Kentucky One. First of all, our net income came in at $212 million on a budget we're anticipated to lose about $10.5 million with the acquisition of Kentucky One. There were 3 notable items that changed the net income. There were the commitments, promises, and foundations to support us over the next 4 years. Because those promises were made, we had to book those into our current fiscal year. So those $34,192,000 are donations that we anticipate getting from foundations that won't be made until the next 3 years are complete. But this is the promise of the pledge of those donations. In addition to that, we had $146 million of acquisition net income related to the buildings and plant of the university and the forgiveness of an IT loan. When you normalize that, as Dan did within the university, our normalized net income was $31,457,000 on a budget of $10,596,000. We had a very good financial year last year, and I think we had indicated to the board that we would manage these in a successful way. And I would say overall, we were very pleased with the financial performance of the hospitals. And this is under a COVID environment, and we'll talk about COVID in a second. Go ahead, Jake. Just to give you some idea of our strategic focus, obviously the first thing that we have an obligation to do is make sure that we have some strong financial performance, because our relationship, we are the academic medical center for the university, and the teaching of students, both nursing and medical students, are important for our community. And so we have a relationship where if the hospital goes over budget, we do a mission share with the university for half of that amount. Right now in the first quarter, our net income is ahead of budget by about $22 million. And so we're still seeing the successful, strong performance in the first quarter. But we're focused on growth this year. We've gone from a period of the first part of the year focusing on the transition with Kentucky One to a second COVID surge, to the social unrest that's happening within blocks of our organization, to really being focused on growth. And so we've opened up the Brown Cancer Center back at Medical Center Northeast. We're opening up a 6-bed ICU at Shelbyville. We've seen a 54% increase in transplants this year over previous years. We developed an inpatient detox program at Mary Elizabeth Hospital. We're opening up 24/7 STEMI interventional cardiology program at Mary Elizabeth. We're growing access. We recruited 43 doctors so far this year. We're developing 4 urgent care centers, opening up our primary care, and we're increasing the residency support to the university by another 17.5 FTEs to 428 FTEs. We continue improvements in our quality outcomes. When we acquired Jewish, Leapfrog score, which is a national scoring system, was an F. That's been moved to a C, but we're working on this every day. And our goals are very straightforward. Bring academic medical care closer to the communities. Prior to the Kentucky One acquisition, we were a downtown urban hospital trauma center, and we're moving to an academic medical center that reaches all parts of the community. Go ahead, Jake. And so I want to give you just a quick COVID update. You've heard others talk about it. Obviously, we're dealing with it every time, every minute of every day. We currently are providing four full-time testing sites that are available throughout the community, and we're partnering with the state. We're also making a special focus on the West Louisville area with doing testing at the Urban League, at St. Stephen's Church, and at different community centers. And so we're trying to reach out to make sure that testing is done. We've done 62,000 patients that we've tested, 3,000 positives. That's an overall positivity rate of 4.8%. However, we've seen another surge recently, and we're now above 7% on positivity rate as you look at the last 3 weeks. if you just get an idea of COVID patients within our organization, if you look back at July, we had about 28 patients. That rose to 48 in August, 46 in September, and 54 in October, although this morning we had 82 patients, 14 in our ICU, which is the highest numbers we've had since this started back in March. We are seeing some volume that is depressed within our organization. Our physician's office visits are down about 7% from prior year. Our ER is down about 20%, and we have 7 ERs throughout the community. But our trauma patients, those that are sicker, we're seeing some of the highest volume that we've seen. And so you hear people say that care may be delayed. That's what we're seeing, is that the patients are choosing not to come to hospitals or go see their doctors because they're concerned about getting COVID, but they're waiting too long. And when they're getting into the hospital, they're a lot sicker than they used to be. We do have a program that's been focused by the federal government called the CARES Act, which is providing some relief for the organizations for lost revenue. And we've lost about $93 million in revenue as we look at the previous few months, and have significant expenses as we've tried to make sure that we have protective equipment for our staff and added on nursing as we do other components associated with this. But we have about $54 million in reserves currently for making up for any lost revenues or expenses for the rest of this fiscal year. And so we're in a really good situation from a COVID standpoint. We have an adequate number of beds to take care of any needs in the community. We currently have about 930 patients in our hospital. Again, I mentioned we have about 1,176 beds, but if there's a surge, we can go up to about 1,500 beds. And so if there is a huge influx of COVID patients, we believe we'll be able to handle them throughout our organization. In May and June, we did go through a situation where we restricted elective procedures. We are not doing that today, and we don't feel like there is a need for us to do that today. But it may come back to that as other states are seeing the surge. But today we have an adequate amount of equipment. Our staff is well prepared and willing to help, and we have beds if there is a need in the community. And so, you know, I won't give you any predictions of COVID, and there has to be herd immunity for this to go away. The only way to get to that, only about 10% of the population is positive so far, and nobody knows how long they will be immune or whether you can get this a second time. But from a standpoint of the overall community, we're well prepared. We have plans in place in case there is additional surge. You're going to hear things from the governor this week about wanting to track open beds throughout the state to move patients around. We're already doing that in the Louisville area between Norton Baptist and ourselves to make sure that every hospital has the ability to take care of patients. But the governor is probably going to do some things also. So not sure yet. We'll know tomorrow as we have a conversation with him. But from a health system standpoint, I would say a couple things. One is we're twice the size of where we were a year ago. We're about the same size, a little bit bigger than UK. We are financially sound, and you've got a team who's committed to trying to make a difference in this community. And with that, Madam Chair, I have nothing else to report.
Tom, would you share a little bit about the flu shot project?
Yes, I mean, part of our commitment in trying to do more, and Neely talked a little bit about the anti-racist agenda. We're also trying to do our part in regard to the disparities that exist within healthcare in this community. If you look at the average age and what the longevity is of individuals, it does vary in this community. And so part of what we're trying to do is open up additional clinics on the west side of town. One of our board members on the U of L Health Board has encouraged us to try to do something with flu vaccines. So she helped us acquire an additional 10,000 flu vaccines. And as we're doing COVID testing on the west side of town, we're also offering flu vaccines. We've got 10,000 flu vaccines extra that we'll have in order to give those away to people that are in need to try to help meet the needs. But that's just a part of, I think, an overall commitment that we have to try to make a difference in the health of the broad community.
Mary, before anyone has questions, if I may quickly add one more thing.
Sure.
Tom, this morning we had our UFL Health Board meeting. Diane Medley is part of that. For our new board members, I want to remind them of our outside directors on UFL Health Board. It is an extraordinarily strong team. Bill Ballard, many of you may know, who sits on the board of United Health Group and was CFO of Humana. Ben Breyer, the CEO of Kindred. Junior Bridgman, that I think everybody who's a Cardinal knows. Rick Riney, the CAO of Ventas. Pat Malloy, Heidi Margolis. It's a really strong health care board, and very happy for their guidance. And this morning we gave feedback to Tom for this board of what I heard from his direct reports and from the different boards of UMC and ULP. And that was that this is an exceptional healthcare leader, and we've done better than we could have expected. We still have a long ways to go. And as you all know, if we had not done this deal, and Scott Brinkman is here, so I need to actually thank him because really was such a key partner to making this happen. If we had not done it, it's not just healthcare and what would have happened to jobs in the community. It would have hurt the university. Between just this and the pediatrics deficiency, the deficits that we were running, just this was over $50 million a year. And with the pediatrics deal, that was another $10 million a year. So that would have been the hit to us and what it would have done to our School of Medicine. But I just wanted Tom to tell you that we're serving people, we're doing what we need to do, we're hiring more, we're keeping our word to the community. And I'm just very thankful to have had the opportunity. It's truly once in a lifetime. These things don't happen every day in the life of a city, but I'm very, very thankful, and I wanted you to ask any questions you may have.
And Neely, just to add a couple things for the board, although Neely's worked over 700 days, she's also spent 1,000 days working for U of L Health in her part-time job. And Diane Medley has done a phenomenal job as the Finance Committee chair. She is representing your board from an oversight standpoint in a very credible way.
Yeah, Neely, if I might, I'll just make a couple of observations. One, I think all of us have seen during this pandemic, you find out what kind of leader somebody is. And I watched Neely and Tom probably age 10 years before my eyes as we went through the decision-making process, whether to even take on the Kentucky One Challenge. And I could not be more impressed with the leadership they've shown of not only getting us through a very difficult acquisition and integration, but then having right on top of that come along the pandemic and the social unrest. And when I think about where we are, it is beyond awe-inspiring. So I want to congratulate you all for your tenacity, and I'm happy to report that despite all they've been through, they both appear to have wiped away that 10 years they aged and returned to their youthful selves.
My hair has not turned back black yet, so it's still platinum blonde.
And
Thank you,
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say that I've actually enjoyed serving on the U of L Health Board, even though it's been quite a bit of work. We've got several big transactions that we've undertaken and also are considering, and I've enjoyed working with Tom and his team and have developed, I think, a good working relationship with them from a board representative level. So I just want to echo what's been said.
Yes, Diane was recognized this morning at the board meeting for her attention to detail. I think that was recognition.
Yes,
it was.
Tom, this is Scott. The presentation projects that our transplants are going to increase, which is a wonderful development. What can we attribute that to?
Well, our transplants have increased 54% over last year. And what we can contribute that to is one, CHI and it's one of the decision-making items that we made the decision on, had made the decision to close down the heart transplant program. and had to send notices to all those patients that that program would be closed down. And we could not stop that until the acquisition in November. But it's back to hard work and back to getting putting resources back in the program, having full-time doctors dedicated to this program who are willing to go out and see patients throughout the community. It can't just be in Louisville, it's got to be throughout the state, and growing that list of patients. And that's during a time where, unfortunately, UNOS has made getting transplant organs more difficult in Kentucky because they widened the range of where transplant organs go to. And so we're now competing with Chicago and Washington, D.C. For organs, and they have a lot more patients that need them than we do. And so Kentucky is now a contributor to the region for organs leaving the state than staying in the state, which was not the case.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Thanks. It's wonderful development.
I guess I got a question. One of the things that we were supposed to be developing was a U of L health dashboard, where this board could in fact track things, know things. I think a couple of meetings or some months ago, we asked for some of the things the board wanted to see. Where are we on putting together that dashboard?
We do have that dashboard ready to go. It's missing some information, Raymond, mainly related to the Kentucky One information. We don't have access to it until we convert their systems on November 11th. At that point in time, I gain access to all of the quality information and can download it. So a lot of that information was specifically related to quality on mortality. I can show you University Medical Center, but I can't show you anybody else. But on the next meeting after November 11th, when I gain access to their IT and they're all on our system, I'll be able to show that to you on a regular basis. Raymond, I can send Jake, I'll send it out to you for the existing information, but all the dashboard for quality is just University Medical Center, unfortunately. But we can send that out to you today. Jake, I'll send it to you in just a few seconds. And that was an 18-point dashboard on different components. I just hated sending to you something that wasn't totally accurate. But the information is right. It's just not comprehensive.
Randy Bufford has his hand up.
Yes, again, I can't tell you being in healthcare, and especially during this pandemic, and also knowing, if you think about the perspective of this acquisition, that no one else really wanted to do it. And so that tells you what the challenge was, and I can't say enough about the great work that you've done. I think a couple of things, and again, a couple of things I think about the opportunity to make a difference in our community, which is our university's mission, is twofold around, first of all, just, continuing, and I know you have initiatives, but at some point in time in the future, if we can quantify, maybe hear back from you, is first is the zip code idea you mentioned is 100% related to social determinants of health. And unfortunately, our physicians are not raised to ask the social determinant of health inquiries when somebody comes in. They ask about what's wrong with you. And there is a lot wrong with you that's not healthcare related. It's how they're living. It's all those things. So anything we can do, initiatives around social determinants of health, building that into the existing new residents that we have, as well as, now I'm not going to say you can change your 1,100 physicians you're working with because you're not that kind of a magician, but, education, initiatives on this. It's something very personal to me. I've seen the ravages in our communities that we operate in and how this has been overlooked by all of us, myself personally, in wellness. And so I have that. The second is I noted you were trying to hire 400 new people, and I bet you the bulk of those are nurses. And so there is a nursing shortage in our community, and anything that this university can do with its resource allocation to increase that availability of that talent in our community is also going to positively impact our healthcare and wellness in this community. Louisville's a great place to live, and we just probably need to get, ultimately over time, more people into our nursing program. So those are two things, but well done. I mean, I just can't tell you, being in healthcare, how proud I am of U of L Health and what it's making a difference in our community. I love our competitors out there. I'm good friends with all of them. We know who they are, but I'm so especially proud to be a Cardinal and associated with Cardinal Health.
Thank you. And actually, Randy, on both of your points, they're so spot on. On the first one, with regard to social determinants of health, we're doing quite a bit. God willing, in our next board meeting, I'll be able to share some very exciting developments in that space. And with regard to nursing, we're very aware of space. That's actually a very big constraint for us right now. I thank you for your support of the School of Nursing, but this is the year of the nurse, everybody. We are really still trying everything we can to invest more there. And Mary, I think Tony has her hand up. Dean Gensel?
Yeah, Randy, I was just going to tell you, I think you would be stunned to see that the social determinants of health are really a big core component of our curriculum now for our medical students. You're right. I mean, when I was in medical school, I don't even think it was touched upon, but it is an absolute requirement for our curriculum. And we are also strengthening that by really doing more in terms of introducing sort of race-based medicine and a better understanding of anti-racism and the impact that that can have on improving health disparities and on better educating our young doctors.
And Tony, I would add to that, the trauma team specifically works on this particular issue with every trauma that occurs within our organization, with a partnership with the city to really try to educate and make sure that one death doesn't generate 3 others, and just looking at the cause of that. And so social determination within healthcare is new, but it absolutely is important that we make sure we do that. And Raymond, I just sent you an email with the dashboard on it. And Jake sent it to you.
And I was the one that wanted Tom to wait until we got everything, but Jake Beamer will be sending all of you the scorecard, but I'm always hesitant. But yes, you can see what we already have, and starting once some of these have taken longer than we thought in terms of getting access to data. But yes, you can see the scorecard, and moving forward, it'll be fully developed. Thank you so much, Tom. And Mary, if I may ask Dan Durbin to please talk about what has been happening with our budget and where we are. Once again, as you know, this was such a concern that SACS was going to put our accreditation at risk because of our lack of liquidity and our financial profile. But Dan Durbin?
Yes, ma'am. Jake, would you mind doing the honors of the slide deck? Thank you. There you go. Okay, so I had briefed the Finance Committee last month on the activity through the end of August. And frankly, the storyline from that continues into the end of September. We have very good and positive trends in enrollment, in tuition. Again, the state budget reduction from last year was basically rebated back to us, rescinded. That added about $1 million that we needed. Our expenses continue to stay in line with budget, and our cash position stays strong. We do have some challenges looming. We have been asked by the state what an impact of a $10 million reduction would have. They haven't pulled the trigger on that reduction yet, but they have asked us what we would do if we were to be reduced by about $10 million. We're very cognizant of the spring and the impact that COVID might have on enrollment pressure, so we're constantly monitoring that. But if I were to think as CFO of the largest risk area across the university at this point in time, it would be athletics. And just simply because of the restrictions on stadium and occupancy and things like that. But that's the bad news. But the good news is there's a group of people who are actively working on plans to mitigate that, to identify it, and we think we have a good handle on what it could be, and we also think we have a very good handle on how we're going to mitigate that. So athletics is probably one of the high risk areas right now, just again because of the it's a self-sustaining activity. That's the good news in most times, but because it's a self-sustaining activity, when something like COVID-19 hits, it's a risk. So. But as long as we have ways to mitigate that, and again, we've worked pretty aggressively. with Vince and his team to work ways to do that. We also are a bit concerned about, especially since Jefferson County is in the red zone now, what that might mean to us, and we're constantly monitoring that. So we have to be aware of the COVID-19 situation around us. And the other thing I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of is the fact that we don't sit in a silo and produce financial reports. We actively meet with deans and unit directors related to their budget, not only where they're at today, but also projections out through the rest of the year. And I wanted the board to be aware of the fact that we are well underway of that. We've been engaged with deans and we're looking at where they're at today. Again, not only things with dollar signs in front of them like revenues and expenses, but also enrollment. Where are we at with enrollment compared to target? What can we do to influence that target, not only through the rest of the semester, for example, in the winter term, but also into spring. So, Jake, if you would. And again, I won't go through these numbers, but in detail. But the last time you looked at this last month, the number in the bottom right-hand corner was around $6 million, I believe, which means that our variance this year compared to last year is we're trending about $6 million higher. We're positive from a revenue less expense standpoint. Last year it was about 92 million. This year's about 96 or so. So we're still trending in a good direction. And athletics is still cash positive from a revenue in and expense out perspective. Through the end of September, athletics was about a 10 million positive. So the impact with athletics has not bled in, if you will, to the university's financial position. So it's still a self-sustaining activity through the month of September. And chances are that that'll happen. That'll continue through December. And we're going to have to do some mitigating actions at the beginning of the calendar year. But again, with the exception of athletics, there's really no other areas presently on the in terms of revenue and expenses that are causing us pause for concern. And Jake, if you could turn the, there you go. Just some detail behind some of those numbers. We identify some significant variances and we give you a little more detail on those variances. Now, one of the things that we're seeing on the expense side, if you look under salaries and wages, remember we shifted a very significant amount of clinical expenses from the university's books to Norton's books when we did the pediatrics integration. So we're seeing a very large decrease in salaries and wages. And I think about at least $6 million of that decrease is related to pediatrics. So what we're starting to see is the impact. One of the things we're starting to see is a positive impact of that pediatrics integration in that it's lifting that old deficit, those old historic deficits, annual deficits off of our books, and we're working at break even or slight surpluses in the future. So knock on wood, things are working as designed. Jake, if you could turn one more slide. Also wanted to update you on the cash position. Cash continues to improve. We ended the month of September with about $215 million of liquid cash in the bank. And again, it's back to the strategy of preserving and conserving for the future to make sure that we have a good, strong cash position to meet whatever COVID-19 and the implications of COVID-19 bring to us. So again, from a CFO perspective, we are on target with the exception of the athletics situation, and we have a remediation plan with that. So at this point, I'm sleeping at night.
Thank you so much. If there are any questions, if not, last time when we presented our strategic plan, my goals for the year, we went through a number of aspects, and there were two areas where I told you we'd have to wait till October to have finalized numbers. One was on research and the second one was on enrollment. And so Beth Boehm and Kevin Gardner, if you would just give very short presentations on those updates, if you don't mind. Again, everything has been a team effort. I have to tell you that I'm extraordinarily grateful for the very, very hard work everybody has put in. And Beth, if you would give a quick update on how we did on enrollment and retention, and then Kevin to talk about research now that we have those data.
Okay, I'm happy to do it. I've just picked a few data points that I think you will find interesting. You know, we were on a trajectory to really improve, to grow by 500 or so students. COVID hit, and we are now up 379 students over last fall's enrollment. That's an increase of 1.7%. We believe it would have been higher had we not had the COVID issues, but we are really pleased. And I think this is why Dan is sleeping at night, to be honest, is because our enrollment has not only stayed steady, it's grown. There are a couple points in here that I want to mention. At other institutions, many enrollment has declined, particularly among African American and Latinx students. There was an article in the Chronicle just yesterday that talked about a 20% decline in those populations and enrollment at most community colleges. I'm really happy to report that our first year freshmen, we are up 3.3% in African American students and 17.8% in Latinx students. So despite things that are happening at other institutions, we have grown in those areas through very sort of deliberate measures that we have been taking over the past 2 years. Another piece that I would like to tell you about is that our retention rates have improved. So we went up almost 1% from 80% to 80.9% in our first to second year enrollment of all students. Our underrepresented students went up from 75.4% first to second year to 79.2%. So we are trying very hard to close the gap between our underrepresented students and our the whole population. And then finally, just as a kind of to give you a broad picture of what this means, our CPE, as CPE counts our underrepresented students. In fall of 19, we were 21% of our student body, our total student population was URM. This fall, it's 23%. As it's defined by the GRS, which is the graduation rate cohort system, we are in fall of 19, we were at 25.5% were URM. This fall, it's 26.4% are URM. And of course, what makes the difference between CPE's numbers and the GRS is that GRS students have to be first-time college students, so they cannot have enrolled at a community college first or any other institution. They must be full-time. So some of our student headcounts are not all full-time, right? Some of our students are part-time students, and they must be degree-seeking. So in that group, we've increased our total population to 26.4. So those are kind of the high-level points. We are worried a little bit about spring just because there is pandemic fatigue, as you all know, and going to college, teaching college, working in hospitals, all of it is harder during COVID. And so some of our students are, I think, and Sabrina can certainly talk about this, finding it hard to remain as engaged as they were. But we are working really hard. We are re-recruiting our freshman class to make sure that they are all feeling like they fit and feeling like they have gotten what they need from us. And we are also reaching out through our student success coordinators, who Patty Payette referenced in her report, and also through our advisors and our faculty to get students who are at risk back in engaged in a way that will make them have a successful semester and enroll in the spring.
And thank you so much, Beth. Just FYI, you don't all have to remember these. If you recall, you will get a one-year update of our strategic plan, where we have detailed numbers from year to year. That's the whole purpose of being transparent. And so with everything going on and data coming in a little bit late throughout, we are maybe a week away at most, but you will all get a copy of the report that shows we said a strategic plan from 2019 to 2022. The whole idea was every year, let's set big goals and see how we are doing. So you will get all of those, but we just wanted to share with you a snapshot of where we are today. But you will all get that report and it'll be publicly available as well. With that, thank you, Beth. It takes a lot of work to be increasing and to be moving the needle on metrics that really matter to us. So still a lot more to do, but we're very pleased with the direction. Kevin, again, because everything will also be in that report, would you give us a very quick update on research numbers?
I will. First, I'm going to say that I started my job at University of Louisville on January 27th, the first day that the COVID patient was diagnosed in Washington State. So I've been 100% of my time at University of Louisville has been during COVID. So Jake's going to share a PDF with you, but we just closed our FY20 numbers, and we have our largest awards to date, $170 million in awards during FY20. So you can see from this that it's a 24% increase from 2015. Just a few of the highlights: $4 million from the U.S. Department of Labor to support Jobs of Tomorrow training. The $7 million agreement with Pfizer that you've probably heard about to support our Center of Excellence in Vaccine Preventable Diseases. $24 million from National Science Foundation related to manufacturing technology. And then the $17 million from AHA. Their breakdown of funding by source is shown in here, and then our innovation metrics. University of Louisville is very successful in achieving impacts in society from the research that we do. So 48 patents were awarded, 368 different types of agreements were entered into, and $9.4 million in innovation income, which includes income from licenses and royalties, as well as income from associated agreements, for example, sponsored research from companies. A couple more recent highlight data points that I just chose. We received a $6.3 million grant from the National Security Agency to the University of Louisville Center for Digital Transformation. That's around cybersecurity training for the healthcare space. That was a great win for University of Louisville. Last week, we signed an agreement with the Department of Defense National Security Innovation Network. University of Louisville will be the Southeast hub for the university programs for this National Security Innovation Network, and we will host a Department of Defense employee on our campus to coordinate not only University of Louisville's contributions to innovation around national security, but all the other universities in the Southeast as well. And then a lot of the awards that are included in here are also clinical trials. And just to relate to what Tom Miller was saying, this is what it means to be a research university in partnership with an academic medical center. And we've got clinical trials of every sort you could imagine, including many clinical trials around COVID for various types of antiviral therapeutics and so forth. You may have read that just in the last week, one of our startups around personalized medicine was acquired for $15 million. You may have also read in the last couple weeks that one of our spin-outs, Talaris Therapeutics, which is a therapeutic, single-dose therapeutic for transplantations so that they don't have to stay on immunosuppressants for their whole life, was just raised a Series B, $115 million in a Series B after raising $100 million last year. So another really successful U of L startup that's really changing people's lives. And that's what I have. Happy to take answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Again, I hope that gives you a feel for the educational mission and the research mission that are so very critical to us and how they're progressing. Again, we know there's a lot more to do, but we are on the right track and things are moving up as they should. I would like to just take a couple of minutes to give you a few more updates, especially to address the anti-racism agenda, or we've said we'll have a cardinal anti-racism agenda. As you all know, in 1997, I believe, House Bill 1 established a vision for the University of Louisville, and that was to be a premier metropolitan research university. And I'm so pleased that we have met that goal. We are certainly a premier metropolitan research university, one of the 130 or so R1 universities that exist. And to us, it felt like we need to be constantly pushing ourselves to prepare ourselves for the next decades to come. And so it's an aspiration. It's not a declaration that we are already there, but to say, how will we be a premier? Everything holds. Can we also say we will be a premier anti-racist metropolitan research university? And as I have talked to people about anti-racism, I'd like to take a moment and address that again with you. To me, racism is a very simple notion that just the color of your skin, which is a social construct, confers inherently superiority or inferiority to somebody. That just that color of your skin makes you better or worse than somebody else. And the way we look at it is anti-racism is, again, the very simple notion that the color of your skin does not confer any inherent superiority or inferiority to anybody. And that's very important to us. In my mind, every university should be an anti-racist university because racism is many, many things, as we all know, but at its heart, it's really intellectual laziness. It is saying, I will find out one rather trivial fact about you and then make all kinds of attributions. It's like saying, tell me the first letter of your last name and I know everything I need to know about you. So we are committed to saying that cannot be the way we move forward. I have talked to many groups and I tell them always that outside of academia, many of you who look in think that we're all snowflakes and we talk a good game, but I will tell you the truth is that as a business person, and I'm very proud of my roots in business, and I talk about the nobility of business, I will tell you that businesses actually do a better job on diversity than most universities, ours included. And so, as many of you know, we are signatories to the CEO Action Forum. The CEO Action Forum, if you look it up, it's every big company you can think of. And so we also signed on to it. The reason I bring that up is when I talk to parents, when I talk to students, I tell them that being anti-racist and teaching our students how to engage across many different people, developing your cultural competency will actually give them a differentiating advantage in the workplace, because that is what businesses are looking for. And the CEO Action, as you know, started with PwC, but I won't take any time. You name a large company, it's in there, and we are also signatories. That's something that's important. So where are we on our agenda? I had asked CODRA at the University of Louisville. These two groups were formed in 1998. One called the Commission on Diversity and Racial Equality, and the other one called the Commission on the Status of Women. So CODRA and COSWA, as we lovingly call them. So CODRA, I thought would be the right place. The chair of CODRA, Karen Chavez, her day job is to be the chief of staff to Dean Gansel, but I will tell you that she does so much more also as the chair of CODRA. So we asked them to develop the first draft recommendations, take a look at what an anti-racist agenda should look like. And they are developing recommendations along four major groups: faculty, staff, students, and administrators. And it's actually 5 groups because under students, they took out trainees, the postdocs, the residents, etc., as a separate group. So really you have faculty, staff, administrators, students, the typical undergraduate, graduate student, as well as the trainees. So I want to thank them for the process, and I'd like to share with you where we are. While they do this, they took the first round of developing recommendations. We said now to implement it has to be somebody from my administration. So this will be headed by Karen Chavez and Dr. Faye Jones. Dr. Faye Jones, as you know, is our Chief Diversity Officer. She has a small but mighty team. They are working very, very hard. So I have charged Karen and Faye with fleshing out these recommendations and working in tandem with administrators. The structure going forward is for every group, let's say it's faculty, there is somebody from CODRA who is co-chairing it with someone from Faye's group, somebody who reports up to Faye Jones. So the community and university's diversity office and someone from the administration. So for faculty, we have Dean Teresa Reed to sit there. The idea is that as these ideas come up, the people who have to implement them need to be actively engaged. So for students, Michael Martis will be working side by side with CODRA convener and a staff member in Faye's office. But eventually, CODRA asked that this work is pretty significant and needs to be done thoughtfully, that just like our strategic plan, we will come out with numbers and goals and tracking. They have asked for a little more time to do that. And so I agreed with their request. So you will see a more fleshed out ideas come to us. I would like to present it to you. At the same time, I would like to tell you that while it's a little more slower than probably what I do things, I think this is the right call. I do agree with their recommendation. We need to be deliberate. These problems were not created in a day. We don't assume this will be a magic pill. There's a lot more to do. However, I do want to share with you my complete commitment to making the University of Louisville a place where everybody, regardless of their skin color, can come and thrive and reach their potential. So one of the things we've done is I learned in my first semester here that we had promised a multicultural center, the space that we currently have for very diverse student groups. It's actually open to anybody at UFL to meet, was truly in disarray. It was not a good place for us to say we care about diversity and equity, and this is the space we have allocated to it. So the promise had been made, and I just decided, not by me, but that was an expectation set to the students. So we've actually invested, and that Cultural and Equity Center is coming up. We are so delighted. That will be ready to welcome students into the space in fall 2021. So Dr. Faye Jones and others will talk to you as it comes along, but we are very pleased that it'll be state-of-the-art technology and a place for students to feel welcome and belong, find their fit and succeed. We also are very pleased over the past week with homecoming activities. Two things that were really meaningful. We held our Black Alumni Reunion Summit. And for those of you who have a chance, I hope you will look. We do have plots that were dedicated to the Divine Nine, the 9 historical Black fraternities and sororities. We were all very socially distant, but I will tell you it meant a lot to have a place to recognize the incredible contributions that graduates of these fraternities and sororities have provided. And Faye provided this to me, so I should tell you that we're very happy that we've received our Higher Education Excellence and Diversity Award this is our 7th year, but this year we're also recognized as a diversity champion, and that is a distinction that's held only by a handful of universities nationally. Again, we'll put this in our strategic planning update so you can see all of that, but we just wanted to quickly share that with you. I do want to thank Gail Dupuy, Dr. Gail Dupuy, who's been working so hard on our strategic plan so that when you see our annual report, you can see the progress we've made against everything that we have mentioned and said that we would do. And Madam Chair, there's one last very quick update from me. And that oops. Yes. Mary?
There we go. I was on a video conference with you and quite a few of the Black leaders and some people from the community that had, I guess, one of the initial conversations about this anti-racism agenda that the university needed to put forward. And as I have talked to Faye, talked to Marion Vassar, and some others, have become aware that before you got here, previous leadership had made some commitments on diversity that, there just wasn't the leadership at the top. There wasn't board sponsorship in terms of things actually getting done, or at least the commitments that were made getting done. So I just want to be sure that you and your team know that from all the conversations I've had with members of our board, we are completely 100% supportive of what you're doing. And when the committee is ready, I think we'd like to hear, more about what they think the university should be doing, by when it should be done, and make sure that this is something we get regularly updated on. But I applaud you for taking this on because it's difficult work.
And it's always, I do not want to make it appear at all that I think we're already there. We get recognized, we're proud of that, but I like to say we're probably the best of a bad lot. Literally in Louisville, by zip code, your longevity, the difference is 12 years. And so there's a lot to do. There's a lot more to do. The achievement gaps, how we will close them, what can we do? So we are committed to that. And absolutely, Madam Chair, I have shared with the committee how eager, but again, I want to respect their request for taking a little more time, and they will present to you. We will make that happen. The last thing, I really appreciate all of you for your patience, is I'd like to quickly update you on and consult with you about designating a conference room in the College of Business. A request was made by Dean Moradian to name one of the conference rooms in the Dean's Suite in honor of a gift. It's a 217 square foot space. Right now it's unused, unnamed, and they say unoccupied except for a copy machine. And this gift is in honor of a recently deceased alumnus of the college, James Mueller. And so if the board has no objections, I did not think that there would be any, but I wanted to bring it up to you. It's naming one conference room, the James E. Class of 58 and Ruth J. Mueller Conference Room. The Dean would like to recognize the alum in this fashion. And any questions about anything else I've presented also, I'm happy to address. I don't think we need a motion and approval, Mary, but I just wanted to inform you on this.
Okay, well, if anybody has any objections, speak up. Otherwise, it sounds like a good recommendation to me. Okay, anything else from on your report agenda, Neely?
No, except that in the Beth Bain noted that we'll have all of the data. Everything is reported effective November 1 for enrollment and so on. So as soon as we plug that in, we'll send you the strategic planning update with everything in it. Excellent.
Look forward to seeing that. So I think the last thing on the agenda is the report of the chair, and I don't have a lot. I'd first like to just, again, thank on behalf of the entire Board of Trustees, the entire university team, the university and U of L Health for just how heroic people have been in navigating what is an incredibly difficult time. So thank you for the hard work and the thoughtfulness and keeping our students and our patients first in everything you do. I have them something that's more housekeeping, which is to remind the trustees that Jake will be sending you a conflict of interest and disclosure form and ask that you complete it, sign it, and return it to him at your earliest convenience. Do you have a deadline Jake, that you'd like to give us as to when you'd like to get those back?
No, there is no hard and fast deadline. It's just at your earliest convenience. We use them for when we
better with deadlines.
And Madam Chair, I forgot one thing. I apologize. Just a quick update to the board. We are actively going through the search process for our provost and our general counsel and our arts and sciences dean. So the process is underway, and I will keep you updated. Just wanted to mention that to you.
Thank you.
before the end of the year would be great, because we use those conflict of interest statements for tax purposes in our 990s.
Okay. All right. So I will challenge all of us to get it in before that date. And then lastly, Krista, I haven't seen you on camera because I guess there's so many of us, but I certainly would like to recognize you for your service and all the contributions you've made as the faculty constituency representative. You know, everybody that's, some of you are new to the board, but Krista is one of these people that brings a bundle of positive energy and enthusiasm to her role in her representation of the faculty. And while I know David will do a fabulous job, we are going to really miss Krista. She's worked hard. She's been invaluable to me when I've needed some insight from her. She served on the Finance Committee, the Academic Student Affairs Committee, the Governance Trustee and Nominating Committee. And I just want to, and also the Louisville Research Foundation, but just want to thank her from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the rest of the trustees and the university for your service. And thank you very much. And I know we can still count on you when we need you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mary. It's just been an honor to work with everyone. I'm going to miss you, but I'm sure that we will see each other. And I think now more than ever, I can really confidently say, you know, as a faculty member, as a former faculty trustee, and also an alumni, that I'm very proud to be a Cardinal. So thanks, everyone.
That's great. Does anybody have any other business to come before the board? That's all that I had on my list.
And Mary, we can tell them that if they have any questions, they can direct them to Dr. Michael Wade Smith.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, because I guess he's now a doctor, that means he gets more work, right?
That's exactly right. He did graduate with distinction from University of Pennsylvania, so we should expect good things now.
Well, we always expect good things, but that is a huge milestone. And again, Michael, congratulations. And I will ask, does anybody else have any more business to come before the board today? If not, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
So moved.
All in favor signify aye.
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 Thank you all very much for your time. The meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.